Let's talk about what's going on here in Davos, Switzerland, because Ukraine President Vladimir Zelenskyy asking global leaders, both in government and business, to support its war against Russia. I moderated a session with the World Economic Forum's International Media Council yesterday with him. It was a room full of editors and journalists from across the globe who had a chance to ask Zelenskyy directly about the ongoing war and what happened and what he believes will happen if he does not get the financial support he's asking for. This is what he had to say.
You said, without help, can we win? Without help, we have to stand. To stand without support of United States, EU, with military support, to stand, it's a big and huge challenge.
And then, guys, we got into a fascinating conversation about how he thinks the world will look and his world will look if former President Trump becomes the president again, and what it means for the war and the support for Ukraine. And this is what he had to say.
He decided, I think, that if not to free the conflict and to allow Putin to go through Ukraine and occupy us, that he will stop. He will not stop. But the question is, what will United States and Donald Trump will do after this point? Because in this case, it will mean that Europe lost the most useful and the most strong army in Europe, because you lost Ukraine.
So I'm going to do a little translation because some of that audio was a little bit hard to hear.
Yeah, there's a beep.
Well, there was a beep because he said, bull, you know what? Yeah. Effectively, what he said a couple of things. First,
on what? He called
on Trump. First, when I first asked him about Trump, he effectively said, look, I can't get in the middle of this. I'm going to have to work with whoever the president is. Right. And I think he felt a little boxed in, frankly, about the question unto itself.
Yeah.
It was then re-asked again. And he said that he felt like there were some conservative Republicans that he considered radical. And the question was he suggesting that Trump was radical? I think he was. And then pivoted towards talking about how Trump had said, look, that Trump thought he could solve this whole thing, right. That he would either, force Putin to end this or end it, or if Zelenskyy wasn't willing to end it, he would take away his arms.
Right.
He said, if you think that would end things, bull, you know what? Yep. He said it wouldn't end it because he believes that Putin will not stop,
right.
And that effectively it will cost a lot less to try to solve this now than it will in the future, because he believes that ultimately Putin is going to go after other NATO countries, and all of a sudden the United States is going to be in a completely different soup that's going to cost an enormous amount more money, right. And will turn into the next true world war.
Sure, that's been his argument from the beginning.
Yeah, and even before election season, there were, before we started talking about Trump again, there was a faction of Republicans that were...
Well, they can't get the funding through right now.
It's almost an anti-neocon part of the party right now. That is not Ramaswamy. That's not interested in forays into foreign conflicts. So, I mean, that is, of all the things that Europe probably would be thinking about or worried about if Trump regains the presidency, I think Ukraine might be the top one.
Top of the list. He also talked about his meeting with Jamie Dimon. We talked about that. We're going to talk to Jamie Dimon about that meeting itself. Jamie Dimon saying, I'm Jamie. I don't know if you saw this.
I saw this,
said, when he introduced himself, said, I'm Jamie Dimon. God bless you.
Yeah.
And he is desperately trying to get pledges made on the financial
side.
I hate
Bitcoin. It's not what he's...
He has yet, though, to get those. I mean, one of the things we should talk to Jamie about is he's been making this argument to financial institutions for a while now that they are a great investment. He has yet. He believes he's directionally getting in the right place, but it's not clear that
Bank of America's
really
CEO Brian Moynihan told us yesterday after his meeting with them that look, the economy is doing much better than you would anticipate in this scenario. That they're able to walk and chew gum at the same time, because they are fighting on one hand, but they've also found ways to get grain out and continue their economy up better than 5%.
But I think it's very hard. Before this ends, it's going to be very hard for big investors, I think, to put real institutional money behind what's happening here. And he's trying to set them up for hopefully what the after of this is all.
For political tropes, is there anything more effective to a certain base in the Republican Party than you're more worried about Ukraine's border than our own border? You hear that again and again. So they always throw and even in legislation, it's like you want money for Ukraine, then you got to do something here. So all tied together.